It's becoming more and more of a challenge to find places to speak without it being cancelled. And I just want to pay tribute to my son, Jamie. You've seen him, the big lad.
Every single event that we've done anywhere in the world, there's been certain groups that have contacted venues, made outrageous libelous claims about what David's going to speak about, and have, in many cases, got venues to cancel on us.
They tell the organisers that I'm going to go on the stage and I'm going to say a stream of racist things, none of which I have ever said, none of which am I ever going to say.
In Germany alone, for example, I've been in touch with over 70 venues, and we've still never managed to pull off a Germany show. And there's a venue that we had in Berlin, which to this day, nigh on well over a year, have never actually contacted me to tell me the event's been cancelled. I found out from a German newspaper when they published a story about it.
And my website is blocked in schools and universities and colleges. It's blocked in government departments and government agencies. And here's me, one person, who was supposed to be this great nutter, and the system is desperate to silence what I'm putting out and to stop as many people as possible ever hearing it. Why? Hey! Thank you! Thank you very much! Thank you! Thank you! It's just incredible how many people are here tonight, because this was only thought of about, what, a month ago. But the interest now is incredible. And that's why they're trying to shut me up, and it becomes more difficult to find a venue big enough for all the people that want to come. There are no conspiracies. I want to make that clear. There are no conspiracies. No one in the entirety of human history has ever conspired with anyone else to bring about a desired outcome. Anyone who says so is a kook, except if you say it's the Russians, it's always true. Every time. This is one of the big things going on today, so important in terms of human freedom. We have the new religion of I am offended. It's about transitory, illusory, irrelevant labels. People get offended about what people say about their race, their religion, their politics, their gender, their culture. All these labels that we give ourselves that are not actually who we are, they're what we're experiencing. And yet, these labels are used to create offense and also the classic divide and rule. One of the great keys to human enslavement, individual and collective, is to sell the idea that your target population is free, the illusion of freedom. Because people who believe they are free do not rebel about the fact that they're not. The key to it all, however, is slavery of the mind. This is a guy called Edward Bernays. He's still known today as the father of PR, what we would call now spin. He said, "We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of. People are rarely aware of the real reasons which motivate their actions." He called it the invisible government. It's that which dictates perception. I call it the program. One big program. That's what human life is, if we allow it to be, from cradle to grave. But the real reason for the control of money and finance globally is control. Now the system says, we have the things you need to survive. So what you do is you do what we say, you work as we say, and then you will earn money from us for buying the things that allow you to survive, and you buy them by giving that money back to us. This is a conspiracy to enslave all of us. And what this evening is about is context. This is what is absolutely missing, not least in the mainstream media, context. If you look at people, organizations, happenings, world events, in isolation, they look a certain way. But you put them in context, how they connect together to a common direction, and whoa, the world looks very, very, very different. The key is why they are happening. The why is what opens the vista up. The idea of the postage stamp is to keep us seeing only the pieces, never the picture, but connect the dots between these organizations, people, world events, happenings, and suddenly, so that's what's going on. This world of the seen is being manipulated from the unseen, which is almost the entirety of existence that we can't see. People can say, we are free, and to them it may seem like it, being able to vote for someone every 4 or 5 years who then does it their like until they get the chance to vote again 4 or 5 years later. It's called freedom. But the idea is to not let us see the bars and not let us see the walls of the prison. What they want to do is to make sure we don't know what's going on, but that we don't know what's going on. How it works is you've got a spider at the center of the web. And then you've got these strands immediately around the spider. All this is in the unseen. And these secret societies, symbolized by those strands, are the most secretive, the most exclusive. Most of them don't even have names, so they're harder to uncover. And then as you come out from the spider, still in the hidden, you meet the secret societies we do know about, like the Freemasons and the Knights Templar and the Knights of Malta and Opus Dei and the inner circle of the Jesuit order and others. Now we hit the world that we see, or the world of governments and banking systems and corporations and government agencies. And at that point, we think that the decisions that are dictating to our lives are being made by those people. In the end, if you go deep enough or high enough, whichever symbol you want, you hit this force. But the vast, overwhelming majority of people in these areas of society have no idea that that's the case, because of something called compartmentalization. And therefore, only a few at the top know the big picture. Everyone else only knows a part of it. What you do is you get some blokes in suits and you plonk a head on them, and you call them Republican or you call them Democrat. These are the here today, gone tomorrow politicians that are basically irrelevant. Because in the Republican Party, for instance, there's a group of people in the background called the neocons or neoconservatives. And they control the Republican Party and they control the Republican president. They're controlling Trump now. In the Democratic Party, you've got another group of people, and I call them the Democons. And they control the Democratic Party and whoever's in the presidency. They, at the next stage back into the hidden, answer to the same force. So whoever the here today, gone tomorrow politician is, that is always in control. It's known by some as the permanent government. And therefore, nothing changes. Whoever you vote for, the same direction of society continues, because the people you're looking at are not the ones in control. So when you see these people that come to power, they don't come to power by accident. They come to power by design. The money, the media coverage, all of that goes to put them into power, to serve this web. Some of them know a lot about what's happening. A lot of them know some of what's happening, and a lot of them know nothing. They're just malleable people who will sign the right paper and push the right policy on behalf of that in the hidden. And yet, if you don't know that, and most people don't, then you have people divided and ruled, fighting each other over which here today, gone tomorrow politician is the right one. And the hidden hand is laughing its pants off, because that's exactly what they want: divide and rule. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. I know some people have come from long distances. And this is the alternative tour of London. In America in particular now, the term deep state is almost common parlance. this hidden government, this global hidden government, is always there. And one of the great centres of that is London. Down there is Downing Street, of course, and the Ministry of Defence. And Downing Street is another location for here today, gone tomorrow politicians. And that's the Bank of England, where they lend people money that doesn't exist and charge them interest on it. It's called organised crime in any other profession, but in banking it's legal. We're heading round now towards Buckingham Palace. It's kind of extraordinary when you think about it, that we think now that we're in a modern, advanced, mature society. But Britain, and indeed the countries of the Commonwealth, have their head of state chosen, to bring it down to basics, by who had sex with who, in what order. That's it. That's how we choose who is the head of state in this country. They're in awe of them. You're not supposed to turn your back on the Queen. You have to back out the room. Oh, it's the Queen, but do we ever ask, why is she Queen? This royal phenomenon is an in-your-face example of what is called today the 1%. Over to the left is the place where most people think this country is run from, the Houses of Parliament. And if you can get the population to focus on the wrong place where the decisions are being made but aren't really, then you're not going to get people to see where the power and the direction of the world is being controlled from. And here we have to the right, on the other side of the river, the Tower of London. Maybe I'll end up there one day, who knows? In the 1990s, a group was created in America called the Project for the New American Century. It was the neocon organization, the one behind the Republican Party. It was co-founded by Robert Kagan and William Kristol, and in it was Dick Cheney, who would become de facto president with Bush, Rumsfeld, who would be head of the Pentagon, the Defense Department, his deputy, Wolfowitz, Dov Zakheim, who controlled the entire budget of the Pentagon as comptroller, and this man, John Bolton, who's never seen a country he didn't want to bomb. And in September 2000, this lot produced a document. In this document, they called for American forces to fight and decisively win multiple simultaneous major theater wars. They named the countries: Iraq, Libya, Syria, Lebanon, Iran, North Korea, China. Nothing changes a status quo quicker or more permanently than a war. So, status quo, you have a war, new status quo. You have another war, new status quo. And each one's taking you nearer and nearer to your goal, which is the global centralization of power. How many people do you know that want a war? Hardly anybody. But we have them all the time. War after war after war after war. And it's this web that is driving these wars. This is why there is always money for war. Because the web is deciding what governments spend money on, and they want the war. So no one ever says, we can't go to war, we can't afford it. General Wesley Clark, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, he was interviewed in 2007, and he said that immediately after 9/11, he went to the Pentagon and was told by a general friend of his in the so-called Joint Chiefs of Staff that the decision had been made that America was going to invade 7 countries in 5 years, and the countries he named were the countries named by the Project for the New American Century in September 2000.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the joint staff who had used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, I don't know. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years.
At number 1, Bush, Republican, Blair, Labour, picked Iraq off the list because that's what they were told to do. And Iraq, of course, was invaded through weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist because it was on the list, it had to be targeted, they didn't have an excuse, they made one up. Then there's this transformation. Now, if we go from Labour to Cameron, David Cameron, the British Prime Minister, Conservative, and we go from Republican Bush to Democrat Obama. But what do? They tick Libya off the list, again, based on a lie, and they start the process to create the civil war in Syria. Now, Drain the Swamp Man comes in, and he's targeting Syria and more targeting Iran. The hidden hand is calling the shots. They come and they go. Where they want it to lead, if we let them, as I've been saying and writing since the 1990s, is World War III. They always plan 3 world wars. And what they want to do is play off NATO against Russia, China, and allies like Iran. And that's what this is all about. This insane demonization of Russia that goes on day after day after day. They're seeking to soften up global public opinion, Western public opinion, to accept a war. This is why you're having this massive NATO buildup of arms and troops on the borders of countries that border Russia. You've got all these troops, American troops, British troops, that think they're fighting for their country, when what they're doing is fighting for that force which is destroying their country and is aimed to create a nightmare world for their kids and their grandkids. If you keep invading countries like Iraq, then, you know, people will look up from the game show and go, hey, Ethel, they're invading someone else, what's going on? So what you do is you get the population, or some of it, in the target country to unseat the leader you want to remove. And this is the specialization of a group of organizations called the Open Society Foundations, run by this billionaire democon, George Soros. They were behind the manipulation of the Arab Spring. That went well for Arabs, didn't it, that? And they are behind what are called color revolutions, like the Rose Revolution in Georgia and the Orange Revolution in Ukraine, where they get the people to appear to have a revolution against the leader, but actually that's not what's really going on. Now, a few weeks ago now, George Soros announced that he was going to transfer $18 billion to his Open Society Foundation group, bringing his total donation so far to $32 billion. That's the kind of money that is there to be used to disrupt countries. And one of the Soros Open Society coups was in Ukraine, when they replaced President Yanukovych, that was looking to Russia, with this guy Poroshenko, who's a puppet of America. And the person who oversaw that was Victoria Nuland, Assistant Secretary of State for Eurasian Affairs, who is the wife of the co-founder of the Project for the New American Century, Robert Kagan. When you get deep in the rabbit hole, it's a very, very, very small world. And the trigger for all this sequence that we're still seeing unfold, was 9/11. And in that document in September 2000, it said that unless there was a new Pearl Harbor, then this process of regime change would necessarily be slow. In the words of the document, further, the process of transformation is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. And 1 year to the month after this was published, Bush called at the time the Pearl Harbor of the 21st century, which started the whole sequence running. Know the outcome and you'll see the journey. This is why it's so important to where they want to go, what their outcome is. Because once you know their outcome, seeing the steps every day towards that outcome are a doddle. But if you don't know the outcome, then these steps are now random. There seems to be no connection, but the outcome connects them. And this structure, this pyramid, is where it's all been leading. I call it the Hunger Games society. They want an elite 1% at its core, less than 1%, that dictate everything. They have all the wealth, they have all the power, they have control of the military, they have control of government, the whole shebang. At the bottom, they want the rest of humanity, basically. Even those who at the moment think they're doing okay, they've got some money in the bank, they've got a nice house and that stuff, none of this matters to me. If you're not in the 1%, they want that as well. And in between, they want this quite demonstrably unfolding around the world, police state, actually in the end, police military state, to hold this status quo and to impose the will of the 1% on the population. The outcome is they want a world government, a world army, a world central bank dictating all finance, and a world electronic currency. This is why they are running around like headless chickens, trying to stop Brexit now. They never believed that anyone would vote to come out. Now they're trying to stop it, because the idea is more and more countries are sucked into the EU, not that anyone leaves. And it's because they want a police-military state where they both fuse that we're seeing the police look and act more and more like the military all the time. This is why a Pentagon program called 1033 is giving tanks to local police forces in America.
Someone has to explain why your local police department has gone from this to this.
Warren County, New York, population 65,000, is a wintertime postcard. Peaceful, picturesque, and well protected. This September, the Sheriff's Department took delivery of a fully armored, mine-resistant vehicle called an MRAP, the same piece of equipment used by soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Once you start dressing and equipping people like an occupying army, they start acting like one. The video that's been making the rounds out here lately is a patrolman punching the lights out of a deranged homeless grandmother. Even worse, that's their training video.
So the web controls politics, money, commerce, media, military, science, medicine and religion, and thus controls perception and outcomes. So when we free our perceptions, we free our lives, and if enough of us do it, then the world becomes free into a world that, instead of being a prison, can become the paradise that it once was and can be again. Only because we change, the world must change. Because we are the world and the world is us. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much. Thank you.